Welcome to this video on the language of hypothesis testing, more examples. In the last video, we learned how to define hypothesis testing, state the null for all hypothesis tests, state the three possible alternative hypotheses for hypothesis tests, state two different types of population parameters that can be used in hypothesis tests, write the null and alternative hypotheses for a hypothesis test, and in this video, we will review more examples of writing null and alternative hypotheses. Let's get started. A political candidate is running for office. She wants to know if the proportion of her constituents that support a bill has decreased since last year's poll when it was reported that 64% of constituents favored the bill. Step 1. We first have to determine if we are working with categorical data, meaning that our population parameter would be the population proportion, or if we are being given quantitative data, which would indicate that the population parameter would be the population mean. This will help us decide whether to use P or mu in our hypothesis statements. Pause this video and see if you can figure out if we are being given categorical or quantitative data. 64% is a proportion. Favored the bill is categorical data. It is a label. Therefore, the appropriate population parameter for this problem is the variable P. Step 2. Now that we've decided to use P in hypothesis statements, we can write the null and alternative hypothesis statements. The null hypothesis always contains the equal sign. Therefore, in this problem, our null hypothesis is that P is equal to 0.64. Remember, we have to use the keywords from the problem to determine which inequality sign, less than, greater than, or not equal to, should be used in our alternative hypothesis. The word decreased in the problem means that we use the inequality sign less than. Therefore, our alternative hypothesis is that P is less than 0.64. This is a one-tailed test because we are only considering the possibility that the proportion has decreased. Let's try another example. Are Americans getting taller? Anthropologists surmise that with the changes in diet and food availability, the average height of U.S. adult males has increased in the past 200 years. Suppose historical data suggests that the average male height was 70 inches in 1800. Write hypothesis statements to test the claim that adult males have increased in the last 200 years. Pause this video, write the statements, and then unpause the video to see if you are correct. Remember, our first step is to determine if we are being given categorical data or quantitative data. The average male height of 70 inches is a measurement. This is quantitative data. Therefore, we have to use the symbol mu to represent our population parameter, which is the population mean. Now that we've decided to use mu, we can start to write our null and alternative hypothesis statements. Remember, the null hypothesis always contains the equal sign. Then we have to use the words from the problem to determine which inequality sign, less than, greater than, or not equal to be used in the alternative hypothesis. So the null hypothesis here is going to be that mu equals 70 inches. The word increased in the word problem means that we have to use the inequality sign greater than. So our alternative hypothesis is that mu is greater than 70 inches. This is a one-tailed test because we are only considering the option that the mean has increased. Let's do another example. Suppose that 2 years ago, the mean household income was $47,000. Economists surmise that the average household income has changed since then. Write hypothesis statements for this situation. Step 1. Determine if we are working with categorical data, meaning that the population parameter would be the population proportion, or quantitative data, which would mean that the population parameter is the population mean. This will help us decide which character, P or mu, to use in our hypothesis statements. As you can see, the mean household income is a count. That's quantitative data. Therefore, the appropriate population parameter for this problem is the variable mu. Now that we've decided to use mu, we can write the null and alternative hypothesis statements. Remember, the null hypothesis always contains the equal sign. We then have to use the keywords from the problem to determine which inequality sign should be used in the alternative hypothesis. The word changed means we use the inequality sign not equal to. So the null hypothesis is that mu equals $47,000, And the alternative hypothesis is that mu is not equal to $47,000. This is a two-tailed test because we must consider the possibility that the average household income has decreased and that it has increased. We have to consider both possibilities, so that's what makes this a two-tailed test. Having watched this video and the previous video, you should now be able to do the following. Define hypothesis testing, state the null hypothesis for all hypothesis tests, state the three possible alternative hypotheses for hypothesis tests, state the two different types of population parameters that can be used in a hypothesis test. And lastly, you should be able to write the null and alternative hypotheses for a hypothesis test.